I want to acknowledge that I am speaking to you today from the lands of the Gayamaygal people. I would like to extend my respect to elders past and present and any First Nations people watching. Sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Mhm. And I'd like to acknowledge that I am on the Musqueam, Squamish, and Swallowtooth nations. Just like Ange said, acknowledging our elders and all the ancestors that have been present in this land, and happy to be welcomed here.
Hey everyone, we are back today chatting about Motherland Fort Salem and the incredible representation that the show provides for so many diverse communities. Joining me today is the ex-pacifist whose earth-shaking power shocked the Camarilla to their core. His relationship with Abigail helped guide her to full goddess potential, while his smooth dance moves dance him into the hearts of every Motherland fan. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome the incredible Tony Giroux. Welcome. Hello.
Oh man, what an intro, Ange. Oh, that got me so hyped. Yo, that should be like in the promos. You should be making the intros to all the characters. That was so hype.
In your own words, who is Adil?
I'd say he's a compassionate young man looking to understand his identity amidst a chaotic world. Yeah, and I'd say that those would be an aspect that always defined Adil. That I think in his journey of arriving in Motherland for Salem, there was so many questions around who he was and how to, identify himself as different yet wanting to assimilate, right? And I think it's kind of the natural conversation of being an immigrant, um, of always trying to understand what is my place here and what is my unique ability, and I think for Adil, how is it that I can fit into the group as he joined the unit, but also what feels authentic to me at the same time. And so I'd say that Adil, yeah, was a man with a lot of questions within himself, and I think that he carried throughout the entire season.
Well, we sort of meet Adil back in season 1 with this desperate boy really wanting to save his sister. But when we see him at the end of season 3, he's a far cry from the character that we saw at the start of season 1. What sort of struck you most about Adil's journey, and sort of how was your own personal journey within the world of Motherland?
Well, I think you said it yourself. I think it was a 180 flip, and I mean hopefully 360, where he is able to refine a way back to himself. But in so many ways, I think from when we first meet him in mid season 1, he's coming with a very specific purpose, and I think it is in a time of his life that was really chaotic, where he had lost his land, a lot of his people, and so I think right away there is an opportunity for him to like redefine himself. I'm sorry, there's this light. Yeah, and I think his evolution, I think, revolved kind of. I mean, back to the question of who he is. It's just this been the journey of that he's found himself on really was about, I think, redefining himself.
So how was your sort of journey going while you were in Motherland?
It was, well, I think it was similar to Adil actually, and it was about kind of, I felt a lot of being like a fish out of water coming onto the show. I had just finished school, a 1-year program in a conservatory in London, and when I arrived in Vancouver to shoot where I was originally living, and right away I'm with this, I mean, incredible cast and who are welcoming me with big open arms, but I can't help but feel, insecure. I'm like, first big job, and I'm coming in, and I feel the pressures from the producers, even though maybe that's all my own projection. And I arrive, and I'm thinking, okay, like, and I have no idea what the full arc of this character is going to be, if he's going to be here for, just a few episodes or for the entire season. So I put pressure on myself, and right away I think the nerves pushed for me as Tony to try and figure out my place amidst this production, right? Which I think actually was hand in hand with what Adil's journey potentially was, of like feeling a fish out of water and trying to understand his place in Motherland Fort Salem the way that I was trying to understand my place, I mean, on the show.
Yeah.
um and then you know, I think, and I have a lot of empathy for Adil's journey because in so many ways that was kind of my experience with the show, that I find throughout the seasons I became more and more part of the family,
Yeah.
both on and off screen. Um, and I think, yeah, it's similar to what the other castmates have said. There was so much chaos, I think, in the world, and trying to run a production during that time,
Yeah.
because the second season was shot, the pandemic first hit big in Vancouver. It was, I think, March 14th of
Yeah.
2021, and then we went to production in October. So when things were loosely being opened up again in
Mm.
August, but we're still in the uncertainty of, like, what does
Yeah.
this mean? What's going to happen? Is this going to be for the next 2 weeks, the next two
Yeah.
months? It turns out it's for the next 2 years. And so actually I felt incredibly lucky to be working, in a time where a lot of people were losing their jobs. There was a lot of chaos in the world. There was a lot of difficulty around dealing with the pandemic, both on a physical standpoint in terms of health,
Yeah.
in terms of people losing some of their loved ones, but also mentally. I think
Yeah.
we all kind of suffered some mental health issues from that. So it truly became, I think, a family for that aspect, and a haven in so many ways,
Yeah.
that I think Adil found as well. I think in being in the chaotic world of Fort Salem, and the entire world that Elliot created, there's, I think, a real strength in what the unit has. I think remembering that together is the bond that is going to get us through thick and thin.
Yeah.
Um, and that was, you know, such a beautiful journey for me to experience both off screen and be able to portray that on screen.
You guys managed to film probably one of the most beautiful seasons of TV that exists during the middle of a global pandemic, and your production didn't shut down. And like season two it's a very soft season in my heart. I'm like, yes,
Mm,
because it is visually stunning, and then also just your performances are outstanding. Also in season three, absolutely incredible. But whenever I rewatch season two, I'm like, they filmed this while the rest of the world was shut down entirely. Well done to you guys.
oh, thanks for your kind words. Thank you. And I honestly, like, kudos to all the producers.
Yeah.
Um, because running a show is already, manic. And so during a pandemic, I can't imagine. So,
Yeah.
big thanks and shout out to everybody on the production side.
I sort of want to talk about in the scene in season two, where Adil is sort of asked to lay down his pacifist upbringing to help Abigail save the kids from the Camarilla, is just really pivotal and sets him up as such an asset to the Bellwether unit. But there is something very complicated about saying to be an asset to this team at that time. He had to lay down a sort of fundamental belief of his. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how was it for you to sort of explore that shift in your character?
Mm-hmm. I think, like you said, a major shift, and
Yeah,
major, I think, having to let go of a piece of your identity, of
yeah,
um, what feels like your belonging, and to be faced with that type of loss, and I think, as the human response to it is, being faced with shame or guilt over things that you were taught were wrong. um, and that was, yeah, trying to explore that, I think, during the second season was, yeah, I mean, it's tough, and I think a lot of times, I think, for me, my process ends up being a lot messier than I'd like it to be, because as much as I'll do research and, read the script over and over again, and try to understand, my place within the character, and maybe the differences between my character and myself, I think a lot of times the lines get quite blurred, and and I really, in a lot of ways, I think there were some moments that I really felt like, oh, I feel angry, but I shouldn't, and this feels right, but it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something that I resonate deeply as well with Adil in general. I think for myself, there's always that kind of tendency between, what do I stand for versus what should I do? What do I stand for in my heart versus actually what does it mean to show up for the people around me? And that a lot of times, sometimes that's different. Um, and then what Adil faced, it's exactly that. In order to show up for Abigail in a way that in season 2 at that time, it is starting to be his new family.
Yeah.
In order to show up for that, I have to grieve and mourn my own family, or what they
Yeah.
would think. And it's I think it's a process of letting go, which I think is beautiful, but also very messy.
Yeah.
Kind of trying to continuously let go of these ideas, of what we are, to kind of embrace, no, actually, this is what this moment needs from me.
Yeah.
And to me, yeah, that definitely was a pivotal moment for Adele.
Yeah. And I think the relationship that he has with Khalida was really well, clearly it put a bit of a strain on it, but it was almost, to me, I read it as by giving up his sort of that pacifist mentality, I feel like Khalida felt like he was giving up his old life. So sort of how was it for you working with Kylie and creating that? I mean, it's a beautiful dynamic that you two shared on screen, but how was it creating their sort of intertwined story?
Well, in a lot of ways, I saw, Adil as, I mean, I'm truly a big brother, and I think my relationship with Kylie really was a really strong relationship that to me felt like a fraternal bond. Like saying goodbye to Kylie at the end of season 3 was so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But in terms of the relationship between Khalida and Adil, Khalida, to me, really being that kind of wise beyond her years character, at least spiritually, and understanding perhaps what the world needs, that type of wisdom.
Yeah.
To me, Adil still actually stepped in. He was the big brother figure who actually has a different understanding and a different maturity that she doesn't have yet.
Yeah.
And I think in making those decisions of perhaps having to utilize violence in a world where where it's a lot of chaos, and understanding that actually sometimes violence is what's necessary to take out a greater evil.
Yeah.
And to me, Adil represented that, making that decision, and to get her to understand it as well. That in order for the greater goal of making this world a better place, that sometimes we can't go about things diplomatically. Yeah. Because certain people will not step down, like the Camarilla will not step down with with just being talked to. They're not going to be talked out of these dreams of theirs of making what they think is a better world.
Yeah.
And so yeah, very much I think saw him in a way a little bit like the revolutionary and the necessary violence that needed to take place, and having to teach her that.
Yeah.
In a way, and then being quite rooted in that belief so that I can confront her about it.
That always read very clearly on the screen, because in those sort of confrontational moments between Adil and Khalida, it felt very rooted in this deep, I love you, I care about you, so I want us to make the right decision together.
Thanks. Yeah, and what you said about just this, when you have to say I care about you and I love you, but when you have differing beliefs, and like when you go through that in real life, it's like so heartbreaking.
Season 3 also really lets us see where Abigail and Adil's relationship has gotten to. It went through the ringer through season 1 and 2, but in season 3 we almost see this like this sense of stability amongst the chaos. it's like a breath every time they're having these little pocket moments together. The Dwight and Shelby dynamic was just one of my favorite parts of the entire season. I'd just love to hear a little bit about your perception of their relationship, like where it got to in season 3 and how they helped each other sort of grow individually, but also as this full team.
What, um, I think the way that I see approaching romantic relationships, typically there's either the, um, similar attracts similar, and then like you have like it's an easier way to go about things, or
Yeah.
you have the different idea of opposites attract each other.
Yeah.
And to me, Abigail and Adele were very much opposites, in their beliefs and their
Yep.
approach to life, and their way of dealing with the world. And when that happens, I think a relationship can be a lot of work. It can be a lot of
Yeah.
fascination of like, oh, that's so interesting. You do things this way and that way. But
Yeah.
then there's the comfort and familiarity is not there. So there's this way of like, man, I always have to find, I always have to reach out. I always have to build
Yeah.
a bridge because it really is like different islands.
Yeah.
Um, which, I've experienced in relationships as well. Sometimes it's just really comfortable, but then you kind of get too comfortable, and sometimes it's so fascinating and different,
Yeah.
but the bridge is just too far to build. And I think for Abigail and Adil, season 1 and 2 was kind of that, constantly trying to build bridges, and sometimes they'd meet in the middle, sometimes they'd be more
Yeah.
on Abigail's island, sometimes they'd met more on Adil's island. And to me, what season 3 represents is kind of that, them finding, actually finally, like you said, stability and grounding in their differences.
Yeah.
And kind of a mutual sacrifice, or a mutual compromise,
Yeah.
where Adil obviously embraced the more assertive part of dealing with the world.
Yeah.
And I think that in mirroring that Abigail took on a softer approach with certain things, at least with the relationship, or hopefully a human to human contact. Even though I think she still remained assertive, and I think Adil definitely remained.
Yeah.
I don't know if the right word is submissive, or just more like supportive.
Yeah.
Supportive of others.
I just every like those little like Dwight and Shelby moments
Oh
just
yeah.
were so cute, and they were like I said, there's this breath of air. The one in that first episode where like everything is okay, but you can be like, oh no, stuff like something awful's about to happen, and that there's just little bit of comedy. How like because a lot of Motherland is very intense. So how was
Mhm.
that for you to bring in those little bits of like I guess playfulness and levity?
Oh, so good. So good. And I think in a lot of ways, I think I brought myself um a lot to Dwight,
Yeah.
because I think that breath of fresh air. I think I deal with the way that I like to deal with the world is also, I think, sometimes like just be like, oh, let's just like let's try and laugh it off, or
Yeah.
because it's tough. I think that life really is messy and difficult, but to try and have, I think, to try and laugh about it a little bit. Maybe I get that from, I was born and raised in France, and
Yeah.
French culture maybe has a different approach to life, that a bit of that joie de vivre. But so bringing that to their relationship and to the show, yeah, was delightful. And
Yeah.
then being able to showcase, I think, because I think it plays that very romantic courting dynamic of,
Yeah.
oh, like, check me out, and like
Yeah.
kind of joke, but then you're kind of awkward, kind of
Yeah.
when you're like in your teenage years, trying to be something that you're not,
Yeah.
and fumbling, and being like, well, well, that's what it is. You
Yeah.
wanted romance, well, you got this. And I think, yeah, I think there's something really beautiful about that, and to remember
Yeah.
that, I think, in the tough moments, to take things a little, try and find moments of lightness,
Yeah.
not to ignore what's happening, but to remember, oh, life is also filled with these beautiful things, and in
Yeah.
the world of Motherland, Fort Salem, to remember, oh, we have this beautiful relationship as Abigail and Adil, and
Yeah.
let's also focus on that.
like, I think a lot of people often forget how young the characters in Motherland are. Like
Mhm.
Abigail, like they're babies, and so I think it was, for me, it was especially beautiful. As you said, it's that, like, it's that teenage, bit of awkward, bit silly, but Abigail and Adil didn't get that at the start of their relationship because everything immediately was a lot. There was a lot going on.
Yeah, I think yeah, being playful is so. I love I love you know that part in life in general, and I think for me it's a very important way to navigate through life. So it was beautiful to for that to be present.
The dancing scene in the Yule episode. I couldn't not talked with you about it. It just is one of my top season 3 moments. I loved seeing you just busting out. How was it for you? Because you are a trained dancer. So how was it for you to sort of bring that into Motherland?
I mean, first of all, it came as a total surprise, because people were, I started hearing people who had read the script before me saying, "Oh, cool, yeah, but and the you'll dance. I'm excited to see what you're gonna do." I'm like, "What? Wait, what are you talking about?" And then and then I get a message from production saying, "Oh yeah, we're scheduling a dance rehearsal," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" Then I read the episode and I'm like, "Oh, cool," and um, yeah, I was so excited. And to me, I was a dancer before being an actor, and I was so excited to bring in that part of me.
Yeah.
And when we met with the choreographer, um, the choreography team was so great at kind of working off of me as opposed to them showing up with, oh, here's the routine that we have and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was, to me, it really felt like a collaboration, and I came in one really wanting to question, oh, like how would Adil dance, being him being the marriage of kind of Eastern culture, the world that he's from, but then also having a strong Western influence,
Yeah.
um, which meant a lot to me as well, being of mixed heritage, to have to try and find this embodiment of two cultures um, within a character, within a dance.
Yeah.
And I had such a great time creating that. And then when we're on set, everybody was so supportive,
Yeah.
and it was kind of a way also that I felt, the production was really embracing me for who I was, for who I am.
Yeah.
And there's no greater gift, to be like, oh, we know this is part of you. We're gonna write around you, as opposed to this is the character that we want you to fit. Um,
Yeah.
so that was an absolute delight.
That's awesome. Jess told me that she snuck into your dance and you guys had a little bit of a twirl, which was
Oh
lovely.
yeah. Oh, Jess always found a way. Like she's such a beautiful dancer as well, and she always found ways to either sneak into the dance sections, or her and I sometimes in between takes, and we just like do this like partner dancing of being like da, 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 da. And she's such a great dancer.
I love to ask this question just because I think it lets me and the fans know a little bit more about you. If you could create a piece of work for this world, but like with the idea of like magic,
Hmm.
what would it be? So, Kat had the idea for something that would allow you to sort of track your DNA and find all of your ancestry, especially for people who had lost, like had gaps in their family tree.
That's a good question. Real work. Yeah.
S had the idea for like invisible noise canceling headphones, so they could just do the work and then have help them to not get overstimulated as easy. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Praneet
Mm.
had like essentially like a weighted blanket working that would be like calm down. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a working, and I think coming from Adil, and I think myself as well, I'm a Capricorn, and which is an Earth sign. So
Yeah.
I think it's funny that I played an
Yeah,
Earth
that is
Earth
very
member.
funny.
Um, I think but I tend to have a lot of going to like insecurities or anxieties a lot, and I think it would be nice to have a working that it's almost like if like a tree or like a plant would come out of the ground and like latch onto my feet and get me to like connect to
Yeah.
reconnect to something bigger than myself. I think
Yeah.
I can spiral downwards into the small idea of me a
Yeah.
lot, and just to remember, oh, you're good. There's a bigger world around you.
Like a literal grounding working.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
working, and it's like boom. There's like it's kind of a in the Marvel what's that one? The one with the Guardians of the
Guardians of the
Galaxy.
Galaxy. Yeah.
You know that moment in the first one when Groot embraces them all.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think well, it's similar to what S and Praneet say. As this protective blanket, but I think just something to to like reconnect to myself
Yeah.
continuously, or actually reconnect to the world around me. Um,
Yeah.
and have like, that kind of ease of saying, it's okay. You're good. You're safe.
Yeah. Adil is so special for so many reasons, but one of the huge ones is his fluency in mother tongue and how that helps him to speak every language. Like what a superpower, right?
Mm.
The moment where you address each member of the session council in their own indigenous languages was huge. How was that entire sequence for you to film? Because not only were you speaking, I think, what, 8 different languages, like in the space of a very short
Yeah,
period of time?
yeah. It was seven. It was seven indigenous languages in I think in the space like 30, 40 seconds.
Yeah, I just would love to know about that entire day and how that was for you.
I mean, I remember when I first got the script, and I think we did the table read, and I hadn't had the translations yet, and so
Yep.
in the script it's all written in English,
Right,
but
okay.
it's saying, oh, it's very pleased to meet you, and then in brackets it's saying, oh, in Shoshone, and then the next
Right,
line
okay.
is, thank you for your hospitality, and it's put in bracket of like different languages, and I'm thinking like, well, this is what I'm gonna have to learn. There's like a
Yeah.
paragraph in the past. It's a few lines in mother tongue,
Yep.
and here it's it's a lot. So I was thrilled because I love a good challenge, and it was, but yet also I think it was really nervous.
Yep.
I was really nervous. I think to me, I take this very seriously. The idea of speaking and kind of honoring indigenous languages, and
Yep.
taking that on as a responsibility, which I think also embodies Adil in a lot of ways. This idea of honoring his ancestors, and
Yep.
I think through this scene he was able to honor other people's ancestors,
Yep.
or honor the ancestors of the land. But that leading up to that day was because I was nervous. I practiced a lot, and I was really lucky to have a great vocal coach, and actually have also meeting with different language, what would you call them, like language specialists
Yep.
of each of those languages.
Oh,
So
awesome.
then they would talk about the meaning behind the words, and the essence of what the saying is. One of
Yeah.
them, he said, I remember we're on Zoom, and I was practicing saying the lines, and he was trying to get me to be more grounded, and then he said, oh, imagine you're walking in a forest, and then he asked me, oh, is there anybody that has passed that you'd like to talk to? And I said, yeah, of course, I have people that I've lost that are very dear to me.
Yeah.
And he says, imagine that you're walking in the forest and you get to see them, and this is your chance to greet them.
Wow.
And then, and in just saying that, you understand the depth of the language, and how much power it has. And so that was such a humbling experience, and joyful learning experience to learn about those cultures. And then on the day, it was incredibly rewarding, because I remember some of the cast who played the members of the council. I remember one of them. She came up to me, and she just said, and she wasn't indigenous. I can't remember which one specifically, but she said, "Oh, that scene, I felt really seen in you just speaking this language."
Yeah.
And there's, it was a moment of feeling so humbled,
Yeah.
to be able to bring forth that voice, that story that isn't mine, but making them feel acknowledged.
Yep.
And I hope that can be something that I can do throughout my work as an artist in my entire life. Not to just to bring meaning to my expression, but also um, to give people a voice of their own.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think Motherland, the power in Motherland as a whole, and as what has really connected fans to it, is so many fans feel seen and so many fans
Mm-hmm.
feel heard by the show and by
Mm-hmm.
by you guys and by the production team. Motherland has done so much for representing diverse communities in a really authentic and beautiful way, with the knowledge that it is sort of it's setting a bar to be raised, right? Like there's always more to be done, and there's always further that we can go with telling people's stories. How important is this authentic representation for you personally, and how has it been to be involved in a series that has, as I said, sort of set the bar like Motherland has?
Great question. And this is a topic that I hold really close to my heart, and that I think Motherland really embodied, which to me, the way I word it is just the normalizing of who we are. That it doesn't matter, whether if you're exactly the norm of what the norm is, or if you're the exact opposite, just that, you're just human, and we're filled with differences. And to me, that I constantly want to move towards that it's normal to be different, and let's try and learn to be fascinated by those rather than be scared of those. I know it's a natural response to be like, I don't recognize this, it's different. But I stand so strongly for that, Ange, around moving towards others with interest and with openness to learning, but then knowing that also, because of the differences, that friction can happen, and that it's okay. I think that for us to have a community where we are filled with different nuances, which is kind of what the world is today, of different ways that me is this, like I identify with this, and it's not so black and white. It's not just like even like one color skin tone, or it's not a specific gender. Like language is, I think, is still very limiting, and for me I think I want to move towards a world where it's just, there's just you and me, and we're different, and there's a lot of things that we can know about each other. There's a lot of things that we'll never know about each other. But let's find a space where we can meet and be equal in that. And so being part of Motherland, I think in a lot of ways it got me even more in touch with that part of me that wants to say, oh no, yeah, that's like oneness in a way, with difference within oneness. And I don't, so feel so lucky and joyful to have been part of this show, to have met Elliot, who created this show, and him, who's such a great human being, and to have seen that also, in a world where there is a lot of differences. We had a cast that was so international. To be aware that there is going to be some friction. There is some certain ways that we're all used to a certain way of working, of being, and having to be open to the unknown, and being like, I don't understand that, but you know what, I'm just gonna go with it. And so that was an incredible experience, and something that I definitely want to take forward, with any projects that I do, and in my personal life as well, to always try and move towards openness to learning, and that emotions are going to come and go through that, and that it's okay, and that we can try and support each other through that, as opposed to fight with one another.
I think unpacking biases is such a complicated thing to do as a human, right? Because we've all got these like deeply ingrained sort of ways of thinking. I know that the way that I process the world around me is different because of my upbringing and because of where I live in the world to yours, and to so many people that I get to speak to in the community, and also within your beautiful cast. How beautiful is technology, right? That you can be sitting in Vancouver, I can be sitting in Sydney, and we can have conversations about importance of language. Like,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that insane?
It's so good, and I think beautifully said. I think everything that you said, it's such a pleasure and honor myself, to be here and like, chatting with you. And
What do you hope, and this is sort of a bigger question, but what do you hope for Motherland's legacy? If this is where it ends, I know the fans are fighting so hard to keep it going, but yeah, what do you hope for how Motherland leaves the world?
I think a reminder to connect with who we are individually, um, kind of what we talked about previously. I think a reminder that it's okay to be who you are. It's okay to be different, and to be able to carry that with us. That I think will bring about so much more harmony in the world, in our communities, in the greater communities, in the online communities. Um, I think well, I'm really proud of this show. Even 3 seasons is pretty awesome in this day and age of television.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just mini series that happen now. Um, Series that just go through like 8 episodes and then that's it. I think for us to have had 3 series with 10 episodes, 30 episodes,
Yeah.
is already great. Obviously it would be great to have seen it go further.
Yeah.
But I really hope that it becomes a kind of staple show for what the world can be. I think and also to an inspiration for that. Sometimes it takes guts to fight for that.
Beautifully said. Yeah. I think the strongest thing that a community can do, and that sort of a person on their own can do, is stand and say, I want the world to be better. Motherland has allowed for a community to exist that will say that and will openly hold each other accountable and hold each other at a high standard, but from now hold the media outlets that are creating these pieces to do better for diverse communities and for everybody who's just never seen themselves on screen.
Because even as you say, diverse communities, it's just like communities. I think
Exactly.
just communities that have never been given the chance to be given a voice, given light, and yeah, being recognized. I think is the greatest thing that we can give to people.
Definitely.
As media makers.
I'd love to sort of wrap up this lovely chat about diversity on screen by talking about your upcoming project. The My Name Is. Please just tell me about that. How was that? What does that project mean to you?
Oh, it's that's my baby, and it's a project that I was lucky to develop and like produce and shoot and organize on my own. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it means the world. And to give a quick rundown on what it is, it's a short mini documentary series on individuals with non-Western names, the link to their identities, and the pressures to conform to Western norms.
Yeah.
And it came to fruition came to realization when I was in school and I met one of our lecturers. She was, I'd say a woman in her late 30s, early 40s, of South Asian descent, and she says, so darker skin, and she says, "Oh, hi everybody, my name's Joe. I'll be your lecturer for film studies." And then she goes on to tell her story, and then she says, "Oh, and I was born a first name Javaria. In my teens, I was named by it so much, or kind of picked on so much, that I decided to legally change my name to Joe." I was like, "Oh, well, that was a story I had never heard before." At the time, because I first heard that in 2018, so 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I decided to follow through with it, and I asked her, I just wanted to do a segment on her, and she does research, and she said, "Oh, I think maybe that's an interesting topic. We could get a bit of funding." And we applied for it, we got it, and I ended up following or interviewing 5 individuals with non-Western first names, and I think at the time I was just really interested to hear about their perspective.
Yeah.
But then in the making of this project, it taught me so much. Like, it gave me so much humility around just hearing their story and just realizing, oh wow, that is the struggle that you face on a daily basis.
Yeah.
and it made me reflect on my own bias to think of, how much do I give respect, or how much, do I acknowledge that when somebody is giving me a name that I'm not familiar with. And I understand that, I think in our day-to-day sometimes you don't have the time, but it's just like, how is it that I can show up and do my best to respect someone, even if that's a matter of, I'm sorry, I don't have the time, or maybe I'll want to see you next time, or I'm so sorry, I'm asking you for the fourth time, please bear with me, and and tell me how to pronounce it again. And it's but yeah, so I'm so excited to have the premiere of it, the physical premiere of it at the institution that helped funding it, and then right after that we'll be releasing it online on YouTube, because it's, for a while I was debating, what should we do with it, and to me that's where it belongs, to a free platform where people who this documentary series is can see it. I think it belongs to people with non-Western names, or people a lot of immigrants, people who wouldn't necessarily go to to a festival or hear about this film. So I just hope that it can make people feel seen, that it can also reconciliate parts of identities that were lost in the sacrifices that we had to make, as when you're immigrating, or that sometimes anglicizing your identity and anglicizing your name was easier because your boss wanted you to, or because this or that, or because actually you might get a better chance of getting a job and whatnot. And to acknowledge that happened, and that's okay, it was tough, but to say, oh, actually that's still a part of me.
I'm so glad to hear that it's going to be on YouTube. I know that it's going to be such a valuable film for so many people, and hearing you talk about it, it's so clear how close to your heart it lives.
I want to add to that and say, actually, it's on each one of us individually, so that, and even teaching, for myself, it's not just on me to learn about somebody else's name. I think it's kind of always learning to find a way to meet halfway, right? So that, because I ask people, if I'm struggling with their name, I ask them to have empathy for me, to have also understanding and compassion that it's different and I'm trying. To have, hopefully, that they have compassion that I'm not going to get it right, maybe the first time or second time or third time, because it's going to take me time to learn. It's going to, I don't know what's going on with my day. Maybe I've got a million things in my head. Maybe I'm super clear and I can be totally present, but I think to be really present is difficult.
Definitely.
So I think as a community, I'd like to think, it's always accountable on every one of us, for me to being open to learning, but then also if somebody's trying to learn about me, to being open to giving, and giving them that space and time to learn it, if they are able to. It's such a fine line, but I think great ideals to try and pursue with education.
I don't know. I think that the world lacks a lot of empathy in many ways today. So
I feel that.
Finding that middle ground with people in any situation is a beautiful and necessary experience.
I would say also, I mean, we could talk about this all day, but I would say even like, the aspect of that, I think it's okay sometimes, even if you do get upset about something, if you're don't feel seen and whatnot, I think our emotions, we can't control them. And it's a matter of, okay, I'm just upset, but knowing that, how does it that we work through that? Because sometimes if I tell myself, oh, I shouldn't get upset, or I know they're trying and whatnot, but if I am, it's just like, no, I'm upset, but to be okay with that space as well. That if there is, like earlier I was talking about, that sometimes there's friction with differences, and to be okay, and that knowing that friction doesn't mean confrontation. That we're in this together, even if it's difficult. It's like that, like, with relationships, I would hope that, like, romantic relationships, the amount of times that I'm like, you're the problem, and like, no, it's like there's a problem, and then there's you and I together, and try to approach it that way. But it's hard.
How hard is this experience of being human and trying to be empathetic to one another while also respecting your own emotions? Like sometimes I'm just like,
totally.
I would like for you to imagine that our characters have been put into a dance battle.
Oh, nice.
I'm gonna give you character pairings, and you just sort of tell me who's winning, maybe what their killer moves are. So our first pairing is Abigail and Thelma Bear Killer.
Both actually were great dancers on set, but I have to give it to Abigail because her and I had so many dance moments, and actually we made like choreography together to Icebox. I don't know if that ever came to light, and we practice it all the time, and so she's my number one.
Yeah, she got it. Easy. Okay, so older versus Nicta.
Ooh. Old Nikta or young Nikta?
Both.
Or the old or the new? Oh, the two together. Oh, so we've got like a duet versus
Yeah, exactly.
older, who also actually at some points sometimes she's like
exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
the 7 olders versus 2 Nictas.
yeah. Oh, dance battle. I think I'm gonna give it to older.
Really?
I'm gonna give that one to older.
Okay.
Even though I think the Niktas have like great dance moves and movement abilities, I feel like older, and knowing Lynn also personally, she's got some like wildness in her.
Okay, easy. Isadora versus Hearst.
Oh, what a great pairing. Oof. I think I would give it to Hearst.
Yeah.
I could see him like
Bojangles.
like jangles and like kind of doing like bad robots and kind of doing waving, being like like a magician, like a kid's magician,
Yeah.
and I'd give him props just for the entertainment value.
Okay, Rael versus Scylla.
Rael versus Scylla. Definitely Rael.
Yeah.
Definitely Rael. Yeah, no, we actually, I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, I have a hard time separating them from their characters
Yeah.
because I know them so well. But I think, yeah, I'd give it to, I mean, Rael and Taylor's got some moves, and she's got, I don't know, she's kind of like this very free child, and like I've seen her like when you just put music or hang out with her at the beach, she's just like one with things around her, and
Nice.
so I'd give her that. Yeah.
Okay. Tally versus M.
I'm gonna have to give it to Tally because I've never seen M dance.
Okay.
Well, in my knowledge, and like I raved about Tally and Jessica earlier.
Yeah.
She was also someone I dance with as well, so I feel space close to my heart that I'd be in her corner for
just
sure.
cheering for her from the back. Yep, yeah, absolutely.
Like anytime she does a move, when the crew's in the back, it's like, oh.
Okay, finally, Adil versus Gregorio.
Oh, you're gonna break my heart. I don't even think that would be a battle. I think they'd find a way to actually do a choreography together.
Okay.
And just take the floor down. It would have to be like such strong synergy that it would for sure end up being a
beautiful duet.
Beautiful duet.
Praneet told me that you two were absolute shockers on set in season 2 too. Like
it was bad. Like Amanda Tapping, who was executive producer on the show and directed quite a few episodes.
Yeah.
When Praneet and I got reunited, I couldn't like keep a straight face, and anytime I was doing a scene with him, and like in some scenes, we're both in the background, and I'm like, this is the worst. It was just a good time.
You're just making your Adorio dreams come true.
Yeah, exactly. The whole time as we're in the back, I'm like thinking, adore you.
Well, this has been just an absolute delight. Thank you so much for your time and your just amazing vibes. It's made me feel much better today, which is quite nice. Best of luck for your upcoming premiere, which is very, very, very exciting. I would love to speak to you again in the future, whether it be from the fans saving Motherland or for one of your, I'm sure, outstanding new projects.
Cool.
Everybody, please make sure that you stream Motherland Fort Salem on Hulu, on Disney Plus if you're in Canada or Australia or a lot of other places in the world. Please be assured that you have got an entire legion of fans following you for your career. I know I will be, just like you were saying, like you'll be behind Tally just cheering. Like I will be standing in the crowd for you, just absolutely going off for whatever you've got coming up next.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much. Have an awesome day.
Uh, Thank you. It's been an awesome. It's been a pleasure to be here and
you.
talk with you.
Thank you so much. Okay, see ya.